the whisper of eternal shadows. For as long as humankind has told stories, there have been whispers of creatures that walk in the dark, untouched by the ravages of time, and fueled by something far darker than mere survival. Across every culture, across every era, these beings have been feared, hunted, and revered. But what if these tales aren't just the relics of imagination? What if, hidden in the folds of history, there is a truth that transcends time, a curse passed from generation to generation, silently weaving itself into our lives? As we unravel this mystery, the question remains, are they watching even now, waiting for their time to rise again? Origins lost in time. Human fascination with vampires has its roots deep in ancient civilizations, long before the Gothic tales of Transylvania took hold of the public imagination. Stories of blood-drinking beings can be traced back to ancient Mesopotamia. The Akimu, as they were known, were restless spirits that roamed the earth, preying on the living. These entities weren't mere figments of fear. They were seen as a cosmic punishment for those who defied the gods, a warning etched into the heart of civilization itself. From Mesopotamia to India, the Vatala emerged in Hindu folklore, spirits that inhabited corpses to wreak havoc on the living. Unlike their Mesopotamian counterparts, the Vatala weren't just predators. They were manipulators, using their undead hosts to inflict psychological torment. Could these stories be independent cultural inventions, or is there a shared root, a forgotten event that gave birth to these haunting legends? In Eastern Europe, the vampire as we know it began to take shape. The Slavic vampire wasn't a ghost, but a physical being, its bloated, blood-filled body a stark contrast to the lithe, seductive vampires of modern lore. They were born not out of mythology but desperation, with villagers exhuming the dead to seek answers for unexplained deaths. What connected these ancient myths? Were they all products of fear, or did they point to a deeper, hidden truth, something tangible, something still lingering? The birth of fear. In the 18th century, vampire hysteria gripped Europe, particularly in the rural villages of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Families fell ill, one after the other, and the air was thick with superstition. When villagers began to exhume the dead, what they discovered was chilling. Corpses that hadn't decomposed as expected, with blood pooling in their mouths. To the terrified villagers, these were clear signs of the undead rising to feed on their loved ones. Medical historians today attribute these phenomena to conditions like tuberculosis, where entire families would succumb to the disease, and decomposition processes that were poorly understood at the time. But these rational explanations only account for part of the terror. In some cases, villagers reported witnessing their deceased relatives wandering the streets, their faces pale and eyes hollow. Could collective hysteria explain such vivid accounts, or were there other forces at play? What if the villagers were right all along? Could these superstitions have been grounded in something we still don't fully understand? The cause and the curse. In exploring the vampire myth as both terror and tragedy, the curse itself becomes the centerpiece of many tales. These stories often blur the lines between historical events and supernatural explanations, leaving us to question whether we are dealing with legends or something much darker. One chilling tale, rooted in these traditions, is the tale of Alistair Blackthorne, the curse that invaded Raven's Hollow. Nestled deep within the misty moors of northern England lies Raven's Hollow, a quiet village where time seemed to move slower, the air thick with the weight of centuries-old traditions. The villagers lived in harmony with their land, believing in folklore, omens, and whispers of curses that no outsider took seriously. Until the summer of 1784, when the Blackthorn tragedy unfolded. Alistair Blackthorn, the youngest son of the village's wealthiest family, had always been an enigma. Strikingly handsome and fiercely intelligent, he was beloved by some and envied by others. But that summer, something changed. It began subtly, a fever that left him bedridden for days. His skin turned pale as snow, and his once bright eyes became shadowed pools of darkness. The local doctor, baffled by the symptoms, declared it a wasting illness, warning the family that Alistair's days were numbered. But then Alistair died, or so they thought. 2 nights after his burial, strange things began happening in Raven's Hollow. Farm animals were found dead, their bodies drained of blood. The village dogs howled relentlessly, and children claimed to see shadows moving through the woods at night. The Blackthorn family, consumed with grief, refused to entertain the villagers' growing fears that Alistair's death had awakened something unnatural. It wasn't until his elder sister Eleanor heard whispers outside her window in the dead of night that the family realized their nightmare had only begun. Drawn by the sound, she peered into the darkness to find Alistair standing in the garden. His face was gaunt, his lips stained crimson, and his once affectionate smile twisted into something grotesque. When she screamed, the apparition disappeared. But the next morning, Eleanor was found lifeless in her bed, her neck bearing 2 puncture wounds, her complexion as pale as her brother's had been in his final days. Panic engulfed the village as rumors spread like wildfire. The villagers demanded that Alistair's grave be opened, and reluctantly, the Blackthorn patriarch agreed. When they unearthed the coffin, they found it empty. Beneath it, in the disturbed soil, they discovered a faint trail leading into the woods. Terrified but determined, a group of men armed with pitchforks and lanterns followed the trail to an abandoned hunting lodge on the outskirts of the village. Inside, they found Alistair. His eyes glowed like embers in the firelight, and his once golden hair was now matted with dried blood. Clutched in his arms was another victim, one of the village children, lifeless and drained. When the men tried to confront him, Alistair unleashed a strength that no human could match. He moved with unnatural speed, disarming the group and disappearing into the shadows before they could act. For weeks, Raven's Hollow lived in terror. Each night brought new victims, each bearing the same telltale signs. The church bells tolled endlessly as the villagers prayed for salvation, but no prayers could stop the spread of the curse. Alistair's victims did not stay dead. Within days of their deaths, they too would rise, their hunger insatiable. Soon, it wasn't just Alistair haunting the woods. It was an entire legion of the undead. The village became a battlefield, with survivors fortifying their homes and crafting crude weapons to fend off nightly attacks. In their desperation, the villagers turned to an old widow named Agnes, rumored to be a witch. Agnes told them the only way to break the curse was to destroy the one who started it, Alistair. She warned, however, that doing so would not be easy, as his transformation had made him nearly invincible. Armed with stakes, torches, and a resolve born of desperation, the villagers ventured into the woods one final time. Guided by Agnes, they tracked Alistair to a cave hidden beneath the moors. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of decay, and the walls were smeared with dark, unrecognizable stains. There, at the center of the cave, lay Alistair, no longer resembling the man they had once known, but a monstrous figure whose every movement radiated menace. Around him were the remains of his victims, their hollow eyes staring accusingly into the void. The villagers attacked as one, their shouts echoing through the cavern. Alistair fought with a ferocity that seemed otherworldly, but Agnes's whispered incantations seemed to weaken him. Finally, with a stake carved from the wood of an ancient oak, the Blackthorn Patriarch drove the weapon through his son's heart. Alistair let out a blood-curdling scream that seemed to shake the very earth before collapsing into a heap of ash. The remaining vampires crumbled into dust the moment Alistair died, their cursed lives tied to his existence. Raven's Hollow was finally free, but at a great cost. Half the village had been lost, and the survivors carried scars, both physical and emotional, that would never heal. To this day, the Blackthorn estate remains abandoned, its windows shattered and its halls echoing with whispers of the past. Some claim that on moonless nights, you can still hear Alistair's anguished cries drifting across the moors, a chilling reminder that some curses never truly fade. Nestled in the misty moors of northern England, the village of Raven's Hollow became the unwilling host of a vampiric plague in the summer of 1784. The Blackthorn family tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the horrors associated with the vampire myth, and how it has evolved through history. What sets this tale apart is not just the curse itself, but its chilling implications. A being rising from death, dragging an entire village into darkness. The legacy of blood. As the story of Raven's Hollow demonstrates, the vampire's curse leaves behind scars not only on the afflicted, but also on the living. The Blackthorn family estate still stands as a ghostly monument, its crumbling halls whispering of horrors past. But this story is just one of many scattered across cultures and centuries, forming a web of uncanny similarities that defy mere coincidence. Could Alistair Blackthorn have been a victim of an ancient curse passed down through bloodlines? Could science, religion, or ritual have failed to fully capture the truth of his transformation? His tale leaves behind more questions than answers. Questions that resonate in every culture where vampires are said to walk the earth. Even as science sought to demystify vampirism, the legend evolved. The 19th century saw a literary revival of the vampire myth, but the romanticized depictions of Bram Stoker's Dracula and Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla only deepened humanity's fascination. Vampires became symbols of forbidden desires, eternal youth, and the thin line between life and death. Modern reports keep the legend alive. From shadowy figures seen stalking cemeteries to claims of vampire cults, the line between fiction and reality continues to blur. Some researchers have even analyzed unearthed vampire graves, uncovering anomalies that defy explanation. What if the vampire has simply adapted, blending seamlessly into the shadows of our modern world. Would we even know if one walked among us? Eternal questions, endless shadows. The vampire myth forces us to confront humanity's oldest fears, the fear of death, the unknown, and our desire to transcend mortality. But with each answer, new questions arise. Were vampires a mere invention of fearful minds, or were they based on something real? Something that still watches from the shadows. One chilling possibility remains. If immortality is a curse, why do we still long for it? And if vampires truly exist, could they be watching us, even now, waiting for their moment to return? If you're as captivated by mysteries as we are, don't let this journey end here. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story. Join us as we uncover the world's most chilling secrets, one mystery at a time. Your next thrill is just a click away.